Let's react to Schaffrilla's Productions Pikmin 2. Why Pikmin 2 is the weakest one. There you go. That's the title of the video. I have yet to watch this whole thing.
I love Pikmin so much. It's one of my favoriteest franchises on the whole damn planet. There's just something about this series that just clicks with me.
Yeah.
The combination of thrilling real-time strategy and cute critter crowd control is just so tantalizing and terrific. Pikmin 1 is one of my most replayed games of all time, offering such a short but immensely satisfying experience that I can go through over and over again and still have an incredibly fun time on each playthrough. Pikmin 3 is one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, with an equally replayable
Top
main
10
story,
favorite games of all
updated
time.
Mechanics, and a boatload of addicting as all hell challenge stages.
That's
that offer
true.
near
Challenge
endless
stages
amounts of fun
actually
as you
are
try and
the
beat your old
best
times
part
and
of
improve your
Pikmin
high
3.
scores.
100%.
Pikmin 4 is quite literally my most anticipated video game of all time, and its 30-second teaser trailer
agree.
is probably my pick for game.
Pikmin 3 was mine, you know?
I even pour a ton of time into
And now it's
Blue,
Pikmin 4, so here we
a
are.
delightful walking companion app that encourages me to constantly exercise and discover new landmarks in the world. All while
Plugging
introducing some of
Pikmin
the
Bloom.
cutest gosh darn decor Pikmin you've ever seen.
I mean, it's alright.
And Pikmin
It's no
2,
Pokemon Go.
It's good.
It's good.
You know, it's a fine enough game. I'll replay it every few years or so. Yeah, Pikmin
Yeah, don't
2
play it too
isn't
much or else
really
you'll
my
go
cup of tea
freaking
compared to
crazy.
the other mainline
Let me know
games.
why.
It's not a bad game, far from it, and it's still definitely very important to the Pikmin franchise, offering a ton of new characters and concepts that are core aspects of the franchise's identity. But in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like it missed the point of what made the first game special. And with the added context of
I agree.
Pikmin 3 borrowing a lot more of Pikmin 1's game design philosophy than Pikmin 2's, I feel like nowadays when I look at this trilogy, Pikmin 2 is kind of the black sheep. Again, not a bad game.
I'd like to comment on that as well. So obviously Pikmin 2 is the black sheep. Like that's not even something, and that's not even a bad thing necessarily. It's very, very clear that Pikmin 2 stands alone. It's entirely different than 1 and 3. Also, mostly due to like time mechanics, not feeling as pressured, having infinite time to explore, caves, time stops in caves, all that sort of thing.
So that's what we're gonna get into today. Why Pikmin 2 is the weakest one, in my humble opinion that you can feel free to disagree with. And as is the norm for a lot of my somewhat negative slanted reviews, let's start out with the good stuff.
Hold on. But before he gets into the good stuff, I can already tell you, tighter controls, enemies, quality of life changes, period, as far as your Pikmin tripping, being able to swap between colors, it's tighter, the C-stick movement's better, Pikmin trip less, it's the engine is the best of the three, and I can give it that, especially after playing 3 Deluxe. Although the Pikmin are smarter in 3 Deluxe, it still feels like you have, in general, less control over them. I think that Pikmin 2 probably is the one where you have the most control over your Pikmin, and that's really, really important. Obviously, you don't have control over your Pikmin, you know, ever, because they're dumb and stupid, and they love to get eaten and run into things they shouldn't touch and trip over and wake up an Emperor Bullblax, because we've seen that. But in general, Pikmin 2 knocks it out of the park as far as what a sequel should do for gameplay, like core controls and mechanics and that sort of thing.
One of Pikmin 2's best new additions is that
Let's
of
see
a
what he
second
says.
character to control.
Second character's the
It's a lot
first
easier to multitask
first
and
thing.
divide your Pikmin squad up to do different tasks, since you can
3
easily
did it
switch between
way better.
captains on different sides of the map. Plus, having 2 characters means this is the perfect co-op experience. Oh, wait, what's that?
That's a really good
There's
point.
no co-op
That's
in
a
the main
really
campaign?
good point, actually.
You implemented co-op into the game via the side modes, but
Yeah.
not the main story for
Very
some reason?
strange.
Oh, okay then. Whatever. Co-op is for pussy.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. Doesn't make any sense why there's not co-op. I mean, I obviously play a shit ton of Pikmin 2, so like, you know, it's something I don't even notice, but like you should absolutely have the option to do that. I feel like people would be way more fond of Pikmin 2 in like I don't want to say like a Castle Crashers kind of mindset, because that's totally different, but like sitting down with your buddies and like just having a campaign. It's like, because Pikmin 2, it's still a short game, you know, and if 2 people are doing stuff, then it's even shorter because you can only control 1 captain at the same time. So a lot of the point of having 2 captains is ruined because it just takes twice as long to do things. Instead of running back and forth on the map, you're doing things with 1 captain as the other just stands there and twiddles his thumbs, you know? They fixed that in 3, but he's absolutely right. Co-op should have been a thing, so.
And that was the end of it. Even if you can't bring a friend along to play the main campaign with, having 2
Yeah, I also hate the
around
charge
is
thing in
still
3.
really helpful in single player.
Don't love charge.
How about those new characters? Louis is such a funny piece of shit. He ruins everything, and you just love to hate him. He's like the Manny Heffley of the Pikmin universe.
He's the best.
And he's a great contrast to the ultra-capable Olimar. I love the implication that he hijacked the final boss's brain and that he's the one who's actually trying to kill you.
Yeah, Louis.
Why would he do that?
So funny.
Because he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
Halfway through the game,
That's so
Louis
great.
is replaced with the president of Hakatate Freight. And once I unlock this guy, I'm basically done with playing as Olimar for the rest of the game.
That's so fair.
The president is so funny. Like,
this guy knows what he's talking about.
Look at
Period.
This scrunkly little silly
It's only
Billy.
been
He may be a
4
filthy
minutes.
capitalist swine,
He knows
but
exactly
I
what he's
like
talking
him
about.
anyway. This game also introduces purple and white Pikmin, which are both obviously very iconic and beloved additions to the franchise.
What are you gonna say
I
about
have my
purples?
problems with how they were implemented and a lot more problems with one of them in particular, but we'll get into that later. In general though, they were both good ideas
Later.
and more than welcome inclusions to the series. I like how this game follows up on the little hints that this was Earth in the original. Part of me misses the subtlety of the original game's world, but at the same time, I like the creativity that stems from the types of treasures you'll discover, especially when we get to see Olimar talk about them in what is easily my favorite part of the whole game. And one of my favorite parts of the whole series, the Piclopedia.
Favorite part of the whole game is the Piclopedia. Is that a hot take, guys? You know what? It might actually not be a hot take. The Piclopedia is pretty dope. I've spent plenty of time in the Piclopedia, to be fair. Everyone loves the Piclopedia. This is true. I mean, I feel like it's great. It's awesome addition, of course, but like, I mean, the game is still a game. You know what I mean? Like, challenge mode's pretty good in Pikmin 2. I don't know, but totally. So much personality is injected from the Piclopedia. I will say, when I was younger, I had a wireless controller, like the Wavebird, you know what I mean? So it was essentially just like this, but wireless. So I was like 6 or 7 years old when I'm playing Pikmin 2. So what I would do is, it didn't make any sense. I would be in the Piclopedia and I would throw carrots and then watch them get eaten, because that's what you do and it's funny and whatever. And then I would try to stand further and further away and throw Pikmin. And with the wireless controller, I could be super duper far, so I'd be like at the top of my stairs. I'd be like looking down, like, you know. So I remember that, and so thinking about how much fun I had with the Piclopedia as a kid, and watching all the creatures just go ham on the carrots.
Olimar has descriptions of
Very
every
true.
single enemy and piece of treasure.
Also, it really
and they're
made me
just so
mad how
delightful.
the Empress
They
Bullblacks
express
never
so much more
activated.
personality than
She was just
any
always
other
sleeping.
Nintendo protagonist has ever had before. Olimar's prose is so elegant and well written, and you can just get lost in his words as this relaxing music plays to accompany him.
Yeah, the
genuinely can't
music
get enough of these
is
journals.
really good.
They're
That's
just
very
so
true.
reassuring and nice to peruse. Oh, and don't worry, all you 3 Louis fans out there, because he gets in on the fun too.
That
Instead
is
of having
absolute
scientific-
cap. People love Louis. People go crazy over Louis. But all 3
observations on
Louis
every enemy in the
fans, that's
game,
wrong.
Louis just talks about how he would cook them.
People
That's
love
actually
Louis.
hilarious. Pikmin 1 offers a simple narrative that nonetheless manages to hook you throughout the entirety of the admittedly very short game. A classic story of survival. Pikmin 2, meanwhile, has crippling debt. Olimar returns home after the events of the first game.
Right.
Hakatate Freight, yes, I pronounce it Hakatate, I don't care what.
Thank you. I say Hokatat. Nobody says it right. I know he gets a million comments. You pronounce it like this? Even if he addresses it, I'm there. I'm there, Schaffrillas. I'm there. Don't worry.
Is now in debt. A bottle cap souvenir Olimar brought back for his son is worth some money. So the president immediately sends you back to the Pikmin planet with Louis in order to collect more random.
I will say one small little tidbit is that a bottle cap's worth 100 Pokos. The strawberry, I think, is worth like 100. I don't even know how much the strawberry's worth, but if That's more than a year's salary, and one strawberry makes you, what, 2 things of juice? No wonder the Kopayats were absolutely fucking starving, because food is dummy expensive, apparently.
It is satisfying to see the number of Pokos you owe go down. Plus, ultimately, the story is just supposed to be your excuse to experience the gameplay. But this is still incredibly weak compared to the first game, where story and gameplay worked hand in hand to drive you and make you want to experience each area and find each ship part. The collectibles in Pikmin 2 are cool and fun to come across, but they feel less rewarding to collect because the goal they're leading
Yeah, I mean, there's 200 of them.
Far less compelling. Missing a collectible in Pikmin 1 could be the difference between life and death.
It's fair.
Missing a collectible in Pikmin 2? Who cares? You can make up those lost Pokemon.
You're not going to
by
get the
killing some
perfect
enemies in
ending.
the dungeons. Nothing in Pikmin 2 feels all
Now,
that
hold
urgent.
on. Killing some enemies in the dungeons. Vanilla Pikmin 2 dungeons do not have enough enemies to... I mean, you can do it, obviously, but you're not getting nearly the Pokoage you think you are. You might be able to squeeze out, 50 Pokos, but, like, that might take you a really long time. You could just get the treasure.
Nowhere is that more evident than with the removal of the 30-day time limit. Now, I understand that this was a divisive aspect of the first game, and that the stress of getting everything done within 30 in-game days alienated a ton of players. But in my opinion, that's kind of the main appeal
It's the best
of the
part.
game. Pikmin
Yeah.
wouldn't be Pikmin without
High
that
key.
urgency, that drive.
You
to
guys know
scrounge
I have an
together
analysis on the
whatever
channel.
numbers of troops you can and find
All
the
3
parts
games.
you're looking for. It's not really that challenging of a time limit. There are 30 days to collect
This
30
is
ship parts.
exactly
5 of
what
which
I
are
was saying.
optional. If you get 1 ship part per day, you're completely fine.
Completely
But I
on
don't
board
know.
with him.
I guess enough people didn't like it, so Nintendo decided to get rid of the time limit entirely in the next game. You could spend as many days as you need to repay the debt. But like, if that's the case,
But that's not how debt
what's
works.
the point of the day system?
I agree. There's urgency in the president's like emails, like, hey, the sharks are after me. Sharks are trying to collect. I'm hiding under a bridge. Like, I'm friends with this animal. There's like all that stuff. Like, it teaches you that, like, it doesn't matter how long it takes to pay back the debt. Is it like the federal deficit? I don't know. Doesn't matter. But I do agree with that point, though. It might not be like life or death, but it could be like, oh, your company goes bankrupt, like bad ending. Like now you're out of a job, so now you're just gonna live on the Pikmin planet. I don't know, something like that. But totally.
Why can't you just spend as much time as you want in an area if the number
RTS
of days
series
it
end
takes
of
you to
discussion.
complete a task
Mhm.
doesn't amount to anything? You're probably saying, well, they can't just remove the day system because that's how the first game worked. And it wouldn't make sense if you could just spend infinite time in an area all of a sudden. But you can do that in the dungeons! Why does time freeze all of a sudden the moment you go underground? How does that make sense, Nintendo? Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I should save this for later. Back to the story. It has no urgency since there's no time limit. If they wanted something less restrictive than what the first game had, Pikmin 3 figured it out with the juice system. Basically,
It's a nice middle ground. The juice system is a nice middle ground that they found. It's kind of impressive how they did that, actually. They directly tied it to earning yourself more days by collecting more treasure. So or more stuff. So I'm completely there. I don't think that he's not necessarily saying that you can't be a Pikmin fan if you don't like time limits. He's saying that because the identity of the first game was tied so much to having that time limit and having those stakes, that not having the second game be like that, but still trying to keep those stakes, it kind of goes, So I do understand. It's hard to vocalize kind of how, obviously, I've done it, but it's hard to vocalize that, it's, what's the point of real-time strategy if there's no real time involved? I could just, I just take as much time as I need. There's no strategy then, Yes, you can do it in a certain number of days. You can fight for, the minimum number, or, whatever, or beat your record. Totally a valid way of playing. And I guess it appeals to both sides. That's probably feedback that Nintendo got, back in 2002 or 2003. I imagine that they'd had a lot of like people say, hey, Pikmin, great game. But, a lot of the criticisms that we've got are from people who, feel like, oh, I put in X amount of time into this game, and, I put, let's say 4 hours into it, 5 hours, 30 days are up, and then I got a bad ending from it and I have to try again, I have to restart. No, that's not like a campaign necessarily. So Pikmin 1 is way more, well, Pikmin 1's way less like a traditional video game. Pikmin 2 is more like a traditional video game, and that's why people really gravitate toward it. Because there is this hard stop, and you really won't hit those 30 days. If you obviously if you know what you're doing even a little bit, but like, you know, for first time players, they probably will hit those 30 days. Like they probably will, you know. So there's, you know, I understand where he's coming from. There's certainly pros and cons, and I've definitely reflected on Pikmin 2's like time limit specifically and not having it. Overall, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a departure from like the series identity, because Pikmin 2 does clean up a lot of stuff as well.
Another aspect of the story that takes a hit is the little end of day monologues Olimar has in Pikmin 1. They're really atmospheric and reflective and often...
Guys, I will say, the emails, I'm not a fan of them. I'm not a fan of them. I agree. I could care less. It's interesting hearing about the president. I don't care at all about Louis' grandma or, you know, whatever. And then they start to repeat. Like, if they just had maybe more, I don't know, maybe more emails, like for the post game and everything like that. I don't know.
Often beautiful, and not in Pikmin 2 at all. Instead, they're replaced with emails from other characters, like the president, Louis' grandma, Olimar's family, a sex hotline. Don't get me wrong, some of these are nice in their own right. Like, I love the idea of hearing from Olimar's wife and kids before.
Depends on what you write about.
None of this really matters that much. As
President
long as
did have the best
gameplay
emails.
is still fun, that's all that matters. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess when you're out in the overworld exploring and discovering treasure with your Pikmin, it's still a fun time. But that's unfortunately only about 20% of the game. It's time to talk about the biggest problem with Pikmin 2 and my least favorite
Buckle up.
of the game in general. The dungeons.
The caves. They kinda stink.
I really cannot stand the dungeon system in Pikmin 2. At first, it seemed like a pretty cool way of expanding the world of the original Pikmin, but as the game goes on, it just becomes more and more mundane and miserable. Before we get to that, however, let's briefly discuss the overworld. I say briefly discuss because you're not going to be spending much time up here compared to underground. Pikmin 2 has 4 main areas, which at first glance seems like a step down from the original's 5, but considering how 2 of the 5 areas in the original were incredibly small, with one serving as a simple tutorial area and the other being little more than a final boss arena, I'd say the general landmass you explore between the 2 games is about the same size. Some of it is even about the same shape between the two.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I mean, 2 definitely has more overworld. I would say, you know. I mean, well, okay, maybe not. No, maybe not. I mean, there is still a little bit more to like the impact site and the final trial. There's like a little bit, yeah, about the same.
2 games.
About
Hey,
the same.
wait a minute.
I'm just thinking of the Wistful
Pikmin
Wild.
2 blatantly
You know.
reuses the map layouts from Pikmin 1.
Okay, but it's
I'm pretty
cool.
mixed about this.
But it's cool.
On one hand, while the layouts are the same, the actual stuff you'll find in these familiar locations is different. And that's kind of cool because it showcases how ever-changing nature is. On the other hand, what? It changed this drastically between Olimar's round trip to Hakatate and back? I don't know, this planet's weird, I guess. More importantly, though, the fact that only one overworld
Hokatati?
area in this game is completely original, and the other 3 are just remixed versions of areas from the first game, yeah, I shouldn't have to explain why that's a bit disappointing. Again, these remixed versions feel different enough, and the game isn't trying to hide the fact that these are old areas,
Yeah.
since they acknowledge that in the Piclopedia. But it's still easy
You
to
can
tell
agree,
that
like the
corners
fact almost
were a
all
big
the game
cut
is in
here.
dungeons. You
But
don't like them.
that's
They
okay,
do get
because
repetitive.
like I said,
They work
exploring
otherwise.
and finding treasures in the overworld is only about 20% of the game. The vast majority of your playtime will be found in the brand new dungeon system. Basically, when exploring the overworld, you find a hole. You jump in the hole and discover that it's a multi-floor dungeon with a ton of treasure to find on nearly every floor. And a boss fight at the end that nets you a special collectible, which will usually enhance your character in some way. This sounds like a slam dunk of a feature, right? There's so much more to explore now than there was in the first game, so what could possibly go wrong? Oh, you know, just about everything, basically. First of all, aesthetics. You know how the overworld areas look gorgeous? Each one is based on one of the 4 seasons, and they all have the finest graphical fidelity you could achieve in 2004? Yeah, well, f*** all that. Let's explore some dank caves for the majority of the game. I really hate the look of...
I honestly, okay, so I'll say I disagree with this point in particular, because yes, while some of them are a little less glamorous, there are still a lot of really nice looking sublevels in the caves. You know, I think there's a lot of good spaces, like the Snaggart Holes birdhouse. I think of the shower room is really interesting. The fact that you have to go through this kind of like underground tile, like, you know, broken down, whatever. Like that's neat. Glutton's Kitchen's pretty cool. Yeah, and the thing is too is that it is underground. You know, like it doesn't need to be as glamorous as the outside world. That's why the outside world versus the caves kind of works, in my opinion, is because, you know, it's like, oh, you're down, you're doing the hard work, and then you come up for air, and you're like, oh my god, the music and everything is like okay, like hard day's work, ladies and gentlemen, like cave spelunking, you know? So I disagree with the drabness of the caves. What I will say, however, is the fact that some of the levels are randomized and almost all of them are flat. And when I say flat, I mean there's not like, you know, there's walls to be broken down, but there's no slopes usually. I can think of, like, you know, the Rusty Gulch kind of has some slopes, but like, I don't know. He's going to go on to it, but I disagree for now.
Like took a look at
Let's
the
see.
Forest Navel, the ugliest area from Pikmin 1, and said, yeah, this is the aesthetic we need more of in the...
Cap. Just because something is not green, grassy, full of flowers, does not mean it's a bad aesthetic. This is a dimly lit dungeon with mushrooms. It's scary. It's... You do not touch the Forest Navel. Best area in Pikmin 1.
Sequel, for some bizarre reason that scientists are still trying to uncover to this day. To be fair, even though this is the main look I remember from
this shit sucks though.
the dungeons, there are other visual themes to play.
I hate that. I hate it.
Rust,
I tell you.
there are some rusty dungeons, so that's nice and definitely
Also-
not really ugly.
also
There's
a terrible
shower
layout.
floor theme, which,
Decently cool.
It still doesn't look the greatest.
You know,
Okay,
whatever.
to be fair, there are
It's not a
some
bathroom.
nice-looking ones, like the
The
snow-covered
snow.
caves, or the ones
snow
that are
one's great.
designed to look like a child's play area.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I really don't like the way these areas look. There's also the logistical questions these mysterious time and space warping holes open up. There's a small issue of how is there daylight on certain floors of these underground caves? Like, could they try and be a little consistent there? But then there's the
No
more
Forest
major
Navel
issue.
slander on the
As I
timeline,
mentioned
please.
Earlier, time just doesn't progress at all when you're in the dungeons, which is
You got
so
to the cave I
bizarre.
completed? Yep,
Literally,
I did.
how and why can you
And then
jump
I
into
decided
one
I
of
didn't
these
want to do that
holes,
anymore.
Spend as long as you want down there, and then pop out with no time passing in the overworld.
He's right.
They never make any attempt to acknowledge or explain this. I guess
He's right, because the thing is that, for instance, challenge mode is a thing, and you're given a time limit in challenge mode. So they could have very easily made the excuse that, like, oh, you know, our spacesuits are only, you know, so powerful, or I don't know, something like that, to have a time limit for each individual sub-level. I agree. I do think that time completely freezing is weird, but... you know, not having a time limit, period, it really doesn't matter. Like, the whole end of day thing doesn't matter at all. But I get it.
and yet the vast majority of this game completely forgoes this key element of the original. That's stupid. I know the time limit stressed a lot of players out, but maybe all that means is that real-time strategy games aren't for them. And that's okay. There's tons of other less stressful games for them to go play. You shouldn't feel the need to cater to people who don't like real-time strategy games by removing the real-time strategy elements of a real-time strategy.
You know what would be really, really good is having the option. Having the option of having a time limit or not. And when I say a time limit, I mean like, oh, the debt needs to be collected in 20 days or something like that. Or you play with the option of not having a time limit. Just like a simple, like, hey, every single cave does have a timer, you know, but you can turn it off if it's not the way you want to play the game. That way, you appease both sides. And I think that would put Pikmin 2 probably be the best in the series. If you already don't think it is, which, you know, I bounce back and forth.
Series.
And you know what? That would work too, because you could have time limits in the earlier dungeons, like, you know, in the White Flower Garden and Emergence Cave, and all these easy, shorter dungeons could have time limits. But then as soon as you clear the debt, you open up, you know, the Cavern of Chaos, you open up Hole of Heroes. Harder dungeons take more time, no time limit. You should take all the time you need to find Louis.
There's not really much to differentiate.
More gameplay variety as well.
From a gameplay perspective, each one is the exact same. There are different enemies and different hazards.
Look at how easy those water dumples are.
Same gameplay loop.
I missed that.
Treasure, killing any enemies in your way, and then moving on to the next floor where you just rinse and repeat. Not a single dungeon offers anything unique from a gameplay perspective compared to...
Well... You know, I'm going to let it roll.
The others. But I played through all of them anyway, as if an actually cool, unique gameplay mechanic would just fall right out of the sky. Ha ha! Fall right out of the sky.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay, so I was lying. There is actually one dungeon in this game with unique gameplay mechanics compared to all the others. The Submerged Castle. Not only
it's the best
is this
dungeon
the
in the
one
game.
Dungeon in the game that restricts you to a certain type of Pikmin.
It's the best dungeon in the game.
Blues, but if you spend too much time on any floor in this place,
Period.
you end up spawning the Water Wraith.
No questions asked.
Invincible hunter.
If you think otherwise, you're wrong. Objectively,
you and your Pikmin, instantly killing them. Suddenly, time management matters again in one of the dungeons, and there's constant fear and tension. You want to grab the treasures and then get the fuck out as soon as possible before this unholy Lovecraftian horror shows up to massacre you.
Literally,
and your beloved
so
little
based.
The background music is distorted and unnerving.
All this is so
reflecting
based.
this creature's bizarre, unexplained origins.
Yeah.
And the eventual fight with it, where you finally get some purple Pikmin and use it to spook this thing into gaining a physical form, top notch. An excellent capper on this incredible.
I mean, yeah, the Water Wraith is definitely over dramatized. That's a really good way of putting it. But at the same time, like, you know, it's been 17 years and it's still like talked about in like the meme and like the, hey, you know, be fucking careful or your Pikmin are gonna get crushed. It's an unstoppable force, and that is just awesome. You know, it's just so cool. You know, and also it's a surprise. It's scary. It's unnerving. The atmosphere, all of that kind of goes into it. And so even when you've killed hundreds of Water Wraiths on your YouTube channel, one drops from the sky, it's still notable. It's still like, oh yeah, like this is now probably a problem for us. Even if you have purples, it could still be a problem. So totally, absolutely, the Water Wraith is freaking awesome. Submerged Castle's
so unique
awesome.
And cool, and probably my favorite part of the whole game. If the other dungeons had some sort of special gameplay,
100% agree.
Then I'd be a lot more positive on the dungeon system and the game overall. But no, unfortunately, this is the one exception to the rule about all these dungeons feeling incredibly samey.
He's right. He's right.
Believe it or not, after all that, we still haven't gotten to my single biggest issue with the dungeon system. You might have noticed that I haven't really talked about the level design of these dungeons yet, and there's a very good reason for that. You see, there is no level design. No, seriously, the floors of each dungeon are randomly generated.
Randomly generated? Randomly generated!
Each floor is always assigned specific treasures, enemies, and other goodies, but every time you reset your game, the layout of the floor will be different, and all of these elements will be in different spots. I honestly kind of hate this, quite frankly. It makes the layout so
This guy's
interesting
cringe.
because no human thought was put into the treasure locations.
No,
on
he's
each
not
floor.
cringe.
There can be enemies that are completely avoidable. And
So far,
pointless
he's been
because the
mostly
treasure
right.
ends up being nowhere near them. There could be walls to break down that just end up leading to dead ends. There could be treasures that spawn in the water that you can't get if you don't have enough blues. But then if you just reset the game, suddenly the treasure isn't in the water
He's right.
anymore.
He's
You know,
right
it
about
just
all of
feels
this.
So sloppy and honestly unfun. I know there's a ton of
I don't know about
games with
unfun.
procedurally generating taste of what could have been the design
Nah.
mission statement for all
I mean,
the
maybe.
dungeons.
I don't know,
I
but-
nonetheless strongly disliked their inclusion, and I'm beyond thrilled that they removed them entirely from Pikmin 3.
Well,
If you
no.
like them, there's no harm in that, obviously.
Beyond thrilled, they removed him entirely. I mean, that's wrong. It's so much gameplay they cut out. I'm beyond thrilled they cut the campaign in half. No, alter it. Change it. Caves are still great. Where's Tong at? Where's Tong at? Put the caves in Pikmin 3. Give them a reason. Give them some design. Yeah, reworked. Reworked a little bit, absolutely.
But just from my personal standpoint, they go against practically everything I love about the Pikmin series.
Sure, everything you love,
The
absolutely.
real-time strategy elements,
I-
the gorgeous
and I see it.
environments,
I
the
totally
push
get
and
it.
pull between completing your main objective and trying to get your Pikmin numbers up.
See,
Since
the cool part, and I know I keep pausing it. I do mean to, but I don't mean to. But I have a lot to say because obviously he's reviewing at a fast pace. It's very well put together as far as an essay and pacing and all that sort of thing. But the cool thing about 1 and 3 is that the cave areas, like the scary areas of the game, are in the overworld, and it's all based on mostly in Pikmin 1. It's based on like the elevation, right? So the time limit still rolls as you're going into the beady, as you're fighting the puff stool, as you're deeper in like the water of the forest navel, like fighting the Wollywogs with a bottle and everything like that. And then like I can think of the Fossbat in Pikmin 3. There's the area with the Crawmads as well. Those are like the caves. So I think that there's pros and cons to having them be separate entities, because Pikmin 2 it's tedious as all hell. So it's the most tedious in the franchise by far, and it drives me crazy. And as somebody who's played a lot of it, and a lot of ROM hacks having to do with it, I totally see that keeping it like separate and like check off the boxes and jump down the cave and then save and then load in and then do the whole thing and then jump down the cave and save and load in, and doing that 14 times in a row for one cave, or whatever, maybe having to reset, doing it all over again. Absolutely, just it becomes a slog sometimes. So I think that there's a middle ground there, and maybe we'll see it in 4. I don't know, probably not, but
oh yeah, I forgot to mention, you can't grab more Pikmin while you're in these dungeons unless you stumble on one of these Pikmin multiplication flowers.
Well, that's awesome.
Hope all your Pikmin don't die when you're down here.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, it's okay, I guess, because as long as you have a few purples, you can basically decimate any enemy in your path.
All right.
That's so cool.
All right.
Let's talk about difficulty now.
There is so much I have to say about the difficulty and balance of Pikmin 2 compared to the others, but
Is Pikmin 2 too hard of a game or too easy of a game?
Yes.
Rather than being a well-balanced
Yes.
experience in terms of its difficulty, I feel like this game honestly just uses really cheap methods to make the game both easier and harder at the same time. I would say the harder stuff outweighs the easier stuff a bit, however, so let's talk about that first. This game is a fucking lunatic with the amount of difficult shit it throws at you. The number of insta-kill hazards has been dramatically increased from the first game. I guess the least egregious of the new insta-kill hazards would be electricity. It's always easy to
the least egregious.
spot, and you can plan ahead
Wrong.
and not take your Pikmin near it.
Oh my
Even
God.
So, if you end up near an electric gate with any Pikmin who aren't yellow, zap, insta-death. It does at least give yellows a lot more tangible use than they had in the
You ever
first
fight
game,
the Titan
but it
Dweevil, bro?
feels like a cheap new addition regardless. Speaking of uses for
He's never
yellows,
gotten through the Dream
remember
Den.
bomb rocks? Those cool but pretty dangerous items yellows could pick up in the first game in order to kill enemies and tear down walls.
The only balance of the game is
Well,
getting your Pikmin
guess
across
what?
thin areas.
They don't work for you anymore. Now they're just insta-kill hazards that are dropped by the new, incredibly annoying careening Dirigibug enemy. Or better yet, they can just fall right out of the sky. Ha ha! Fall right, I wanna die. Of course, bombs randomly spawning out of the sky is actually rather generous compared to some of the other shit the sky can spew out.
He is entirely correct about all of this.
At least the bombs have a timer for you to get away from them. Try that shit with giant insta-kill rocks. Good luck making sure your entire squad of 100 Pikmin gets away from the huge looming rock shadow. Oh, and you know what else can pop out of the sky? Entire enemies, including some really dangerous ones. Aw, you shouldn't have.
He's
Pikmin
so
2.
right.
The traps on these dungeon floors are fucking absurd, and they don't feel like they were fairly balanced in the slightest.
No.
They instead feel like cheap ways of artificially upping the difficulty. through
Exactly.
unfair
I
Pikmin
agree.
deaths. And they're
Totally.
made even worse by the fact that the areas you encounter them in are so cramped and tight. It's
Absolutely.
incredibly difficult for your entire squad to
Totally.
avoid these hazards. The best strategy is usually to take Olimar with just a few Pikmin or none at all, and walk into every corner of the floor in order to trigger all the traps before exploring it the normal way.
Rocks are
And
the
I
least
don't
threatening
know,
of
that
all
just
three.
Kinda seems incredibly tedious and not how.
This is to a T exactly why I don't hold Pikmin 2 on a pedestal, is because it's actively mean to you. He's absolutely right. The game can't decide if it wants to be nice to you or mean to you. It's like, oh yeah, you're on a rest floor and we have skitter leaves and flower petals and spectralids, and then all of a sudden you go to the next floor and it's just raining bomb rocks, and you're like, why would you combine bomb rocks with electricity, with wollywogs, with like, just, I totally get it. It is tedious. It is the whole, if I don't want to reset, I'm going to have to go through the entire level, activate all the traps, and then didn't do it at that point. 1,000,000%.
How this sort of game should be designed. There's other annoying elements, like the abundance of bottomless pits in certain floors that'll make it incredibly difficult to fight enemies that shake Pikmin off of you. Then there's enemies like the Bull Bear, a roided out ball boy.
Honestly, you don't really encounter the whole shake off Pikmin thing in the like the Rusty levels all that often in the vanilla games. I will say a few times, like in the later dungeons, but not that often.
Who's incredibly difficult to kill, and the Gatling Groink, who laser death beams your Pikmin at any opportunity.
Awesome enemy,
and it
though.
almost seems Pikmin 2 isn't like that, because the challenge often stems from random insta-kill elements, which feels far more frustrating than fun.
Totally.
And yet, despite all of that, there's still an argument to be made that this is the easiest Pikmin game. Not just because of the non-existent time.
No, that's not true. Pikmin 3 is the easiest Pikmin game. Try absolute the fuck again.
Limit, but because of the existence of everything purple. Let's start
No,
with purple.
doesn't matter.
One of the new features added to Pikmin 2 are these special berry plants with little red and purple berries. If you take enough of these berries back to your ship, you can get red and purple spray. The red one is used to temporarily power up your Pikmin, making them faster and stronger. This is a pretty good and balanced addition to the gameplay of the series, and it even returned in Pikmin 3, so clearly the developers were happy with it as well. But then there's the purple spray.
Yes.
Use this on enemies and they instantly turn to stone, meaning you're free to annihilate them before they break out. While it's pretty fun to do this to an obnoxious enemy giving you trouble, it's also incredibly cheap and lame. Turns out the best way to deal with a Bull Bear or Gatling Groink is to just not engage with them at all. Turn them to stone and wail on them. They won't even leave a body behind, so you don't even have to worry about them coming back to life. How nifty! Look, I really do appreciate that there's an easy way to dispose of these obnoxious twats, but this kind of just feels like an automatic win button. It's just not really fun for this to be the most practical solution to deal with these guys.
Yeah.
The worst part about purple.
Yeah, that's super true. Isn't the only reason I beat Kaizo purple potions? I mean, not the only reason, but certainly a reason. I mean, it's a mechanic given to me in the game. Even the vanilla game. So, like, not using it is foolish. Bitter sprays, mostly, to me, are just like, I mean, they're a Band-Aid, quite frankly. You're in a bad situation. It's like, just like, I gotta get out, or I don't want to lose all my Pikmin. I'd rather use the bitter spray and get out of there that way. There's a reason they took it out in Pikmin 3. It's because it is super egregious. Maybe I don't know exactly what the better like middle ground might have been for it. Yeah, bitter sprays
spray is that you can just
something.
farm obscene amounts of it by spending in-game days collecting purple berries.
Especially, guys, and you know what? It's funny because this could be remedied if there was a time limit. Bitter sprays as a mechanic could be remedied because if there was a time limit, that means that you'd have to use your time to farm the broken sprays instead of collecting the treasure and doing X, Y, Z. Or if the dupe spray glitch didn't exist,
then
yeah.
it might be a fair and worthwhile
There it
inclusion.
is. There it
but
is.
Instead, the purple spray doesn't even hold a candle to the absolute size of this absolute unit, the purple Pikmin. I think it's a good idea to bring in a new type of Pikmin that can carry more weight than a normal Pikmin, albeit at a much slower pace. That's pretty nice and well balanced. Unfortunately, balance goes out the window entirely when talking about combat. Purple
Oh, yeah,
Pikmin
look at all the-
essentially
look at that stun.
invalidate every other type during most enemy encounters.
Actually, a lot of why purples aren't as crazy is because, you know, you want to save them, right? You want to make sure that you don't kill your purples because you want to be able to lift the doomsday apparatus. So, like, yes, you can spam, 30 purples, but really, like, you're only going to bring in, like, 10 purples into a cave, usually. And if you lose 5 of them, you're probably going to reset the floor. You're probably not going to go just farm more. You're probably just going to reset because it's way faster. You'd rather have it where caves are a wormhole or time stop above. The cave itself can collapse, which puts a time limit to the cave. If the cave could collapse, very cool idea. Very cool idea. Bullshit, man. Reset for 1 purple. Yep. 10 to 15 is the max you bring. Exactly. You never reset the floor. You're better than most. Or you bring in like 30 to 40 purples. You don't lose them if everything dies before it can hit you. True, but then you have to think about think about cannon beetles or something. Enemies that can engage you from afar, even groinks, or volatile dweevils. Enemies that chase you down that you can't instantly just kind of like deal with. Yeah, electricity is a good one. Like, stuff that purples can't handle, because there's a lot of things purples can't handle. And in fact, the biggest downside to purples is their speed, period. Not being able to get them out of the way of enemy attacks is absolutely the reason you're going to lose purple Pikmin. When they're deflowered and you have no nectar, like, you try to run from an enemy, like, they're not going to be able to run fast enough. Like, you got to try to swarm them. You got to be really, really careful with them. So, and especially if it's 30 to 40 of them, then you have to wrangle 30 to 40 of them, which is hard.
It's kind of embarrassing, really. And you can employ this strategy of just chucking some purples on most enemies in the game. Even ones where it would seem like other Pikmin would be better for it. Whoa, fiery blowhogs? This looks like a job for the reds who are immune to fire. Actually, no, the purples managed to kill him in the time it took me to say that sentence.
Yep.
Little electric beetles? The yellows would be pretty good for as long as they're not actively shooting electricity. You can kill these beetles a lot quicker and easier with purples. Full or strategic ways. All you need to do is chuck purples on.
Oh yeah, the
Pikmin.
weakest is not the
Bada
worst.
boom,
No,
they're
absolutely.
dead. There are a few enemies that you still need the normie Pikmin for, like the fiery bulborb that requires reds, or any enemies you encounter in the water. But there's not nearly enough of them to take away from the purple palooza that makes up most combat encounters in this game.
Jesus.
Also, I found
So
footage of
brutal.
purples managing to kill a fiery bulborb just fine without dying, so
Yep.
I retract my statement about reds being required for them.
It's a
There
thing.
really is no fucking use for reds anymore.
That's
Thanks so
absolutely
much,
true.
purples. You were just complaining about how hard the game is. Why aren't you welcoming this thing that makes it so much easier? Well, because this isn't really addressing most of the cheap shit the game throws at you in order to raise the difficulty through the roof.
Yeah, it's artificial.
Yeah, purple Pikmin are helpful at dealing with annoying enemies like the Bulbear and Gatling Groink, but they can't do a thing against the cheap traps that fall from the sky in just about every dungeon. They make it so one half of the gameplay is insanely
Totally.
easy baby shit,
Totally.
while the other half is merciless slaughter. And like, call me crazy, but I don't consider that to be good difficulty balancing.
He's right. It's not. That's entirely true. I cannot disagree with that. It's the shit that gets you killed in Pikmin 2 is the bullshit. It's not like, oh, I lost a Pikmin because of this, because of my mistake, because of XYZ, in vanilla Pikmin 2 anyway. He's right. Totally right.
Both are frustrating in their own unique ways. And if you want to remove the easiness,
Yeah, you're either
by
gonna
just not
body
using
things
the
with
purples in
purples.
combat, then congrats. You're playing fair against the game, but the game isn't playing fair back. Because now you get to deal with insanely difficult bullshit enemies
Yeah.
on top of the other
Yeah.
bullshit that you can't do anything about.
Yep.
But do you want to know the most annoying thing about all of this? at least from my perspective. I don't know if this is something that gets on most Pikmin 2 players' nerves.
Let's find
Or
out.
Maybe it is. I guess you guys can let me know in the comments.
This is the Doomsday device, isn't it?
This rusty old shake weight right here is the bane of my existence whenever I replay this game. Because it requires 100 purple Pikmin to carry.
I have such mixed feelings on the Doomsday apparatus. If you save the purple Pikmin grinding until near the end, you only have to do a round or maybe 2, but you shouldn't have to do the grinding to begin with. Yeah, you shouldn't have to grind for it. Yeah, if you play perfectly through every single cave, let's say, they should have made it so that you just have 100 purples by the time you make it to the Wistful Wild. If you do all 3 areas, there should be enough Violet Candy Pop Buds to be able to have 100 purples, at least. Like 110, 120, sure. You know, but like, yeah, you end up at the Wistful Wild and like, you know, with 60, 70 maybe, maximum. So I totally agree. Because it requires you to grind. But it's also, at the same time, it's a post-game area. And if you want to complete the game, you know, like, you have to work for it. You know, you see something weighing 1,000 and you're like, oh shit, like that's really heavy. You know, like I'm gonna need all 100 purples. Like 100 times 10, 1,000 purples can do it. You know, so I get it, but it should have been a realization, and then you should have said, oh, well, let me go to my ship where I have 100 purples. You know, instead of, oh, let me go back to the Valley of Repose and grind the subterranean complex for, I don't know, 45 minutes or whatever, you know.
Purple Pikmin.
Yep.
The Pikmin Wiki recommends that you go all the way down to the 8th floor of the subterranean complex.
Very true.
In order to grind on those purple candy pop buds over and over again to reach 100. Let's say you have 40 purple, since a lot of them inevitably died to some traps or stronger enemies.
Not if you reset.
You get 15 purples
like a true Pikmin 2 player.
Subterranean complex, and you need 60 purples. So you essentially have to trudge through 36 dungeon floors you've already beaten, watching the same cutscenes and loading screens that you've already seen hundreds of times.
It definitely,
through normal
it's a fucking
until
slog.
You finally have enough purples to
slog.
get this godforsaken weight. This one treasure makes it so I never want to lose a single purple.
This
it might mean
is
an extra
also
trek through
true.
8 floors of the goddamn subterranean complex
This part's fair.
that I've already beaten. Essentially, every time I lose a purple in one of these dungeons,
You know, it really does affect, knowing that there's a treasure there, it really does affect how you play the entire beginning of the game, though. Because you lose a purple and you're like, well, all right, I get it. Like, I'm going to have to reset, or I'm going to have to do whatever, because I don't want to lose those purples, because I don't have to go back, yada yada. So it does change how you play the beginning part of Pikmin 2. Absolutely. That's my experience. Obviously, whoever else can have their own experiences or how they take it. You know, you might not be somebody who minds grinding. I play Pokemon, and I play fucking Pikmin 2 Lands of Torture. So obviously I don't mind grinding usually, but I totally understand. It's not
I just reset.
as
Doing
frustrating.
the floor over
Yeah,
again
here it is.
Is far less painful than the slog of trying to get that
Yeah.
purple back later.
Yeah, it
and
is.
if none of your purples die, which none of mine did thanks to the handy dandy reset
Here we go, yep.
button, you'll still only have around 65 purples by the time you clear out all the dungeons.
Yeah, he's
Meaning
right.
you still have 3 subterranean complex treks to get through no matter what. So yeah, this single treasure has a huge detriment on the gameplay, since it forces you to be paranoid about your use of purples and make sure that none of them die.
Yeah.
Lest you be subjugated to a truly awful, monotonous grind. And if this discourages you from using the purples in combat in order to preserve them, then congratulations! Your reward is dealing with some truly nightmarish enemies without your greatest asset against them. Oh, but don't worry, if you don't want to use your one purple automatic win button, you can always use the other one. Turn them to stone and kick their asses. Who gives a shit anymore? Why is this game like this? I don't want to play it anymore.
He's right.
Can we just stop?
He's right.
Can we, let's stop the video.
This was literally me.
I'm done. All right, we're done.
All right, this was me an hour ago. Oh, can I just stop? Can I just stop playing? Do this other thing, please? It's just tedious. You're right. Yeah. Okay.
Look, at the end of the day, Pikmin 2
If you don't
is
quit your
still
job
a
and change
Pikmin
profession when you
game.
lose
It's
a
still
purple,
fun
you're
to
not a
raise
true
up your
Pikmin
numbers
fan.
of these little
Facts.
guys. And you see why I consider this to be the black sheep of the main series? It has a lot of good things going for it, but when it's sandwiched between two legitimate masterpieces that both stand as some of my favorite games of all time, yeah, it's pretty damn weak in comparison. But let me know what you guys think. I know this one is a lot of people's favorite, and I can totally respect that opinion. So if you think that way, feel free to share your reasons why. Good night, PNF 404.
All right. Hello, folks. Let's talk about it just a little bit because I have things I have to do, unfortunately. And I'd love to. You guys know I could talk fucking Pikmin balancing all day. You guys are really gonna hate me because I mean I agree with not all of his points, but he talks about it as somebody who's played an absolute ton of Pikmin, and as somebody else who's played a ton of Pikmin, I really do agree with a lot of it. Certain things he phrases wrong, I think a lot of it comes off as a little more negative, but really what gets me about Pikmin 2 is that it plays entirely different than 1 and 3, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And comparing it to 1 and 3 is really difficult because it's the black sheep of the series, and it is a lot of people's favorite, and it is very difficult to like talk about Pikmin 2 critically because it's the best one, it's the one with the ROM hacks, it's got the best engine. All of this is all very true. It's got not the best balance in the game. That's Pikmin 3 has the best balance of Pikmin types also, by the way. But Pikmin 2 is it's either dumb easy or really hard for the wrong reasons. And of course it's great. I mean, it's a fantastic game. I love the Pikmin series. I love all three of them. I think mostly some of his opinions on like the caves were a little bit suspect, just saying, oh, they should be completely removed. I think they should be maybe reworked. I think that a lot of benefit would come from Pikmin 2 if there was a time limit on the debt, and then after that, you can then explore the planet as much as you like, because I think that having that time limit on the debt means that you have limited amounts of time to grind those purples, grind those bitter sprays, and kind of dick around in caves. You can spend 45 minutes on the second floor of Emergence Cave if you want to. You won't, but then you spend 13 minutes above ground, and then you're right back down in the caves. And I don't agree that like just because the caves aren't as aesthetically pleasing that they're inherently worse than like the rest of the above ground places, because Pikmin 2 is known for the caves, period. You know what I mean? The caves are the most of the game, so it warrants a lot of discussion, totally. And he was hard on the caves, of course, but I think rightfully so. And you guys know I have a Pikmin analysis video on the channel. It's an hour and 40 minutes long. I talk about all three games in it, but all the criticisms that he makes about 2, I also make a lot of those same criticisms in that analysis video. So, and as somebody who has shared my opinion over the internet, obviously having an analysis video out there like that, you get a ton of I get a ton of comments asking me, oh, why do you feel this way? Or that's a bad take. Or, well, it's actually, and it's mostly from people who are trying to stand Pikmin 2 as the best one. But all three of them are good, except for Hey Pikmin, which we will play. At some point, we're going to play Hey Pikmin, guys. I'm going to. I don't know how long it is, but it's going to be something that happens. If you guys enjoy the content, please consider leaving a like. If you haven't subscribed, do so. I make tons of content on tons of different stuff. I'm going to get out of here. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Everybody enjoy their weekend. I'll be back soon. Always keep an eye on the Discord, Twitter, community posts, yada, yada. Peace out.